You don't belong with civilized people. Know your damn place." The vicious words roared from the billionaire, Kieran Bancroft, his face twisted with pure, drunken hatred. Without warning, his hands shot out, and he violently shoved Zara Vance, the black CEO's wife, backward. She flew through the air, crashing into the Gala's brightly lit pool with an explosive force. The crowd of shocked, wealthy guests pulled out their phones, recording everything. When Zara surfaced, gasping for air, her designer gown ruined, Bancroft just stood at the edge of the pool, adjusted his tuxedo, and smirked. But what that billionaire didn't know was that Zara's husband, Elias Vance, was the one man who held his entire failing company in his hands. He was the only one who could save him. And in a few moments, Elias would walk over, look the groveling billionaire in the eye, and cancel the $5 billion deal that would have saved his empire, bankrupting him on the spot. Welcome back to Black Lives Story, where we tell the stories that must be told. If you believe in what we do, show your support. Please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.
The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Grand Hotel was not a room. It was a testament to old money. The ceiling was a masterpiece of vaulted plasterwork, dripping with 3 massive crystal chandeliers that cast a warm, golden, and unforgiving light. The air was thick with the scent of thousands of white orchids and the kind of expensive perfume that announces its arrival from 10 feet away. This was the annual Children's Education Foundation Gala, the most exclusive, most powerful, and most expensive charity ticket in Atlanta. But it was in reality a stage. It was a performance, a gathering of the city's dinosaurs, the politicians, the bank presidents, the old family heirs, all orbiting one man, Kieran Bancroft. At 72, Bancroft was a living relic of a bygone era. A third-generation real estate mogul, he was a man who owned half the skyline and believed, with the certainty of a king, that his blood was a purer shade of blue than anyone else's. He was the host of this gala, the sun around which all the other planets turned. And tonight he was desperate. But his desperation was hidden, as all old money desperation is, beneath a mask of bored, aristocratic arrogance. Across the ballroom, on the moonlit terrace overlooking the infinity pool, stood Zara Vance. She was, in every conceivable way, the future. At 36, she was a senior partner at the city's top law firm, a Harvard-educated attorney who had argued cases in front of the Supreme Court. She was dressed in a midnight blue designer gown that was the definition of quiet luxury, her hair in an elegant updo, a single strand of diamonds at her throat. She was taking a moment of refuge. The ballroom, with its political handshakes and fake smiles, was exhausting. She was checking her phone, a quiet smile playing on her lips as she read a text from her husband, Elias. "The board is drooling over the numbers. They're ready to sign. How's the party?" She typed back. "Full of dinosaurs. You'd hate it. Hurry up. Elias Vance. The other son in this universe. The new money tech god. The founder of Vance Digital. And the one man who, at this very moment, held the key to Kieran Bancroft's entire, crumbling, $5 billion empire." Zara was here tonight not just as a lawyer, not just as a guest, but as the lead counsel for her husband's company, here to observe the man they were about to make a deal with. Kieran Bancroft stepped out onto the terrace, flanked by his inner circle, a fawning bank president and a corrupt, giggling senator. Bancroft was not just tipsy, he was angry. The deal with Vance Digital was not yet signed, and his creditors were calling. He felt his power slipping, and it was making him vicious. He stopped, his eyes landing on Zara. He saw a black woman alone at his party on his terrace. He didn't see a Harvard lawyer. He didn't see his future business partner. He saw an outsider, a token, a weed in his garden. Well, 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 Bancroft slurred, his voice loud enough to carry. Look what we have here. The entertainment? His friend snickered. Zara looked up, her face a mask of polite, professional calm. She recognized him instantly. Mr. Bancroft, she said, her voice cool and steady. A lovely evening. Your foundation is doing important work. She prepared to walk past him, to head back into the ballroom. But Bancroft, fueled by alcohol and a lifetime of unchallenged racism, stepped directly into her path. He was a full foot taller than her, and he used his size to loom. Not so fast, he sneered, his eyes raking over her, from her diamonds to her shoes. I don't recall seeing you on the guest list. Are you one of the help? Perhaps you're here to sing for us? The senator laughed. Be nice, Kieran. She's probably just lost. Looking for the bus stop. Zara's polite smile vanished, replaced by an icy calm that she usually reserved for hostile witnesses in a courtroom. Mr. Bancroft, she said, her voice a scalpel. I am Zara Vance. My husband is Elias Vance. We are your 10 p.m. meeting on Monday. That $5 billion meeting? The one that's going to save your company from bankruptcy. The words hit him, but he was too drunk, too arrogant to stop. He was enraged that she wasn't cowering. He was furious that she spoke to him as an equal. He laughed, a cold, ugly sound. Vance's wife? Oh, I see. The affirmative action hire. The ghetto girl he dressed up and brought to the big city. How adorable. He stepped so close she could smell the $500 glass cognac on his breath. Listen to me, girl, he hissed, his voice dropping to a low, venomous roar for her alone. I don't care if your husband is the king of Africa. You are in my world now. This is a party for civilized people. People who built this city. You don't belong here. He pointed a shaky, liver-spotted finger in her face. So why don't you take your ghetto ass back to whatever project you crawled out of, find your husband, and tell him to be grateful that men like me are even willing to do business with people like you. The racist, classist, hateful words just hung in the air, a physical, poisonous cloud. Zara didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't move. She just stared at him. Her sleeping giant calm was, to him, the ultimate act of defiance. She simply said, her voice as cold and clear as the diamonds at her throat, Mr. Bancroft, you are drunk. You are racist. And you just made the single biggest mistake of your entire, pathetic life. Step aside. She tried to move past him. And that was the moment he snapped. Step aside. The words, spoken with such cold, clear, and final authority, hit Kieran Bancroft harder than a physical blow. This girl, this ghetto woman he'd allowed into his world, was not just defying him, she was dismissing him. In front of his friends. In front of his peers. She had looked him in the eye, listened to his venom, and called his entire life pathetic. He had come out here to prove he was a king, and she, with a few quiet words, had exposed him as a fool. The rage that had been simmering beneath his alcohol-fueled arrogance now exploded. It was a narcissistic, white-hot, uncontrollable fury. He was no longer a desperate businessman. He was no longer a calculating host. He was a cornered animal, and all pretense of civility was gone. You, he hissed, his voice a low, dangerous growl. You bitch. You think you can talk to me like that? His senator friend, seeing the look in his eyes, the look that preceded one of his infamous, terrifying temper tantrums, tried to intervene. Now, Kieran, let's go inside. Shut up, Senator. Bancroft roared, shoving his friend's hand away. He turned his full, murderous attention back to Zara. She was still trying to walk past him, her face a mask of cold, legal disdain. She was treating him like an unruly client. And that was his final snap. He saw her, not as a person, but as the embodiment of everything he hated. The new money that was making him obsolete. The diversity that was polluting his bloodline. The uppity blackness that refused to bow. She was his failing company. She was his creditors. She was Elias Vance. She was everything that was making him weak. and he had to destroy her. "You want to be in my world?" he roared, his face a purple, contorted mask. "You want to swim with the sharks?" He took 2 lunging steps toward her. Zara saw it coming. As a lawyer, she was trained to read intent. She saw the tensing of his shoulders, the widening of his eyes. She tried to raise her hands, to pivot away. But she was in a designer gown and heels. She was on a slippery marble terrace. And he was a 200-pound man, fueled by pure, racist hatred. "Then swim, you ghetto trash." He didn't just push her. He shoved her, with both hands flat against her chest. It was a violent, brutal, and deliberate act of assault. Time slowed. Zara's feet left the ground. She was airborne for a single, horrifying second, her midnight blue gown billowing out. Her eyes, wide with shock, locked with his. She saw the satisfaction in them. Then she crashed. The impact was a brutal, cold shock. The water, a pristine 72-degree blue, felt like a wall of ice. It drove the air from her lungs in a single, painful whoosh. She sank, her heavy, waterlogged gown pulling her down like an anchor. The silence of the gala, which had been a polite murmur, was shattered. 100 heads turned. A woman in the ballroom screamed. Zara kicked, her legs tangled in layers of silk. Her Harvard-trained mind, a mind that could deconstruct a 40-page legal brief in minutes, was now reduced to a single primal thought: up. "I need air." She clawed her way to the surface, breaking through with a desperate, choking gasp. The air was cold. Her hair, which had been in a perfect, elegant updo, was now a ruined, dripping mass. Her diamond necklace felt like a chain, and her mascara, which she had so carefully applied, was streaming down her face in black, humiliated rivers. She was in the middle of an infinity pool, at the most exclusive gala in the city, and everyone was staring. The crowd of civilized guests, the senators, the bankers, the heirs. They didn't rush to help her. They pulled out their phones. A forest of black iPhones and Samsungs rose up, their small, red record, lights blinking in the dark. They were witnesses, but they were not helpers. They were an audience. And this was the best show they'd seen all year. Zara, treading water, her gown now weighing 50 pounds, finally locked eyes on her attacker. Kieran Bancroft was standing at the edge of the pool. He was not horrified. He was not ashamed. He was not running. He was smirking. He adjusted his tuxedo cuffs. He smoothed the front of his vest. He looked down at her, this brilliant, Harvard-educated lawyer, this wife of the man he desperately needed to save him, who was now reduced to a gasping, ruined, drowning woman. He looked down at her, and he smiled. A smile of pure, satisfied, sociopathic power. He had won. He had put the ghetto trash back where it belonged. He had proven, in front of his entire world, who was strong and who was weak. "Well, well," he said, his voice now a calm, mocking purr. "It seems you tripped." His friends, the senator and the bank president, who had been frozen in shock, now saw their cue. They let out nervous, ugly laughs. "My goodness, Kieran," the senator said, playing along. She's all wet." "Indeed," Bancroft said, his smirk widening. He looked at Zara. "Maybe now you'll finally know your damn place." He had no idea. He had no concept. He thought he had just ended the argument. He thought he had just won the war. He didn't know that the 50 phones, all pointed at his smirking, triumphant, racist face, were not just recording a social scandal. They were recording a financial execution. He didn't know that his entire $5 billion empire had just died. Right there, with that splash. He just hadn't heard the shot. This is the private study of Kieran Bancroft. It is not the bright, airy, celebratory ballroom. It is a tomb. A dark, mahogany-paneled room, 90 floors above Atlanta, where the curtains are drawn against the daylight. The air is stale, smelling of old leather and older money. Kieran Bancroft is not the smirking, confident king of the gala. He is a 72-year-old man in a silk dressing gown, his face pale and gray. He is a cornered, terrified animal. He is on the phone, and he is yelling. "What do you mean they won't extend the line?" he roars, his voice a dry, papery rasp. "I've banked with them for 40 years. My grandfather built that bank." He's listening. His face, once purple with rage, is now draining of all color. They said what? Systemic risk? He whispers. He can't even say the words. You tell them who I am. You tell them I am Kieran Bancroft. He slams the phone down. But it's useless. He knows the truth. He looks at the report on his antique, 18th century desk. The report from his CFO. It's a sea of red ink. Kieran Bancroft, the old money real estate mogul, the man who owned half the skyline, was in secret completely and utterly bankrupt. His empire, Bancroft Holdings, was a dinosaur. It was built on 100-year-old assets. Empty office towers in a post-COVID world, dying shopping malls, and badly leveraged land deals. He was $5 billion in debt. His creditors, who had once feared him, were now circling. He had 90 days. 90 days until his entire 100-year-old family legacy was liquidated. Sold for scrap. He was a king on a hollow throne. And he had one and only one lifeline. 20 miles away, in a tower of glass and steel that pierced the Atlanta sky, was the headquarters of Vance Digital. This was not a tomb. It was a hive. Sunlight streamed into a massive, open-plan office where hundreds of the world's brightest, most diverse minds were, at this very second, building the future. And at the center of it all, in a glass-walled corner office, sat Elias Vance. Elias was the new king. The 38-year-old self-made black CEO who had, in 10 short years, built an AI empire from a single line of code. He was the man everyone wanted. He was looking over a proposal, his face a mask of bored, intellectual curiosity. It's a dinosaur, Zara, he said, not looking up. Bancroft Holdings. Their entire business model is a fossil. They're hemorrhaging $500 million a quarter. Why are we even looking at this? From the other side of the massive white oak desk, Zara Vance, his wife, looked up from her own tablet. She wasn't here as a wife. She was here as the chief legal counsel for Vance Digital. A Harvard Law graduate who was, by all accounts, sharper, scarier, and more brilliant than any lawyer in the city. We're looking at it, Elias, she said, her voice crisp, because he's desperate. And desperate men, as you know, overpay. He's not just desperate, Elias said. He's bankrupt. He just doesn't know that we know. Our new predictive AI ran the numbers. His company, it's a ghost. It's got 6 months, max, before it implodes. Which, Zara said, a small, lawyerly smile on her lips, is why he's offering us $5 billion. $5 billion. An unheard of sum. He's offering us $5 billion, Elias said, for our Helios platform. He thinks our AI can save his dying real estate empire by predicting market trends before they happen. Can it? Zara asked. Oh yeah, Elias smiled. It can. In 12 months, I could turn his $5 billion in debt into a $10 billion profit. The man's sitting on a gold mine. He's just too stupid and old money to know how to dig. Zara leaned forward. Elias, I don't like him. I've done the research. The man is a walking civil rights violation. He's got a dozen discrimination lawsuits against him, all quietly settled. He's a racist, a bully, and a relic. Do we really want to get in business with this man? Do we want to save him? Elias looked at his wife, his gaze softening. He respected her mind more than anyone's. No, he said, his voice firm. We don't. But his board of directors does. And they're willing to give us $5 billion and 2 seats on their board to do it. We're not getting in business with him, Zara. We're taking over. We'll use their money to save his company, and our first act on the board will be to vote him out. We're not saving him. We're replacing him. Zara processed this. A cold, corporate, and surgical takedown. She smiled. I like that. Okay. So the gala. Elias groaned. Right. The gala. He's hosting it. He's desperate to sign this. He wants us both there to press the flesh and reassure the old guard. It's the perfect place to observe him, Zara said, her legal mind spinning. To see who he really is. I want to see how he treats the staff. I want to see who he talks to. I'll go. I'll be your eyes and ears. You sure? Elias asked. It's his home turf. A room full of dinosaurs. Zara stood, gathering her papers. Elias, I've handled hostile witnesses in a federal courtroom. I think I can handle one old money racist in a tuxedo. I'll scout the terrain. You show up later, we sign the term sheet, and by Monday, we own his future. This was the hidden power dynamic. The fatal $5 billion instant karma trap. Because Kieran Bancroft, he was an old money recluse. He had never, in his life, seen Zara Vance. He didn't know what Elias Vance's wife looked like. He had no idea that the Harvard-educated lawyer, the chief legal counsel, who was, at this very moment, in charge of the due diligence on his $5 billion lifeline, was the same black woman he had just called ghetto trash and shoved into a swimming pool. Kieran Bancroft was triumphant. He stood at the edge of the infinity pool, a king surveying his conquered territory. The ghetto trash, as he'd called her, was sputtering, soaking wet, her expensive dress ruined, her dignity shattered. He had done it. He had put the new money in its place, all in front of his peers, his friends, and a dozen recording cameras that, in his mind, were just documenting his power. He adjusted his tuxedo cuffs, his face set in a perfect, cold, satisfied smirk. He was so high on his own arrogance, so drunk on his old money power, that he didn't hear the terrace doors slide open. He didn't hear the crowd's horrified whispers shift, changing from, "Oh my God, him," to "Oh my God, him." He didn't hear the footsteps, but he felt the shadow fall over him. A voice not loud, but so cold and so full of controlled glacial fury that it seemed to drop the temperature of the entire terrace by 20 degrees, spoke one simple word. Bancroft. Kieran Bancroft froze. That was not a voice he was expecting. He turned slowly, his smirk still fixed on his face, ready to make a joke, to dismiss this interruption. And he saw him. Elias Vance. He was standing right there, not 10 feet away. He wasn't in the ballroom. He was here. He was in his $10,000 custom-made tuxedo. He was the man Bancroft was supposed to meet on Monday. He was the man who held the $5 billion lifeline. He was the black CEO of Vance Digital. Bancroft's smile wavered, but his arrogance held. He hadn't connected the dots. He just saw a business partner. Elias. Bancroft brayed, forcing a drunken, jovial laugh. Good, you're here. You just missed it. This woman, she was harassing my guests, and then she tripped. Right into the pool. Can you believe it? The staff, they just let. He trailed off. Because Elias Vance was not looking at him. Elias's eyes, cold and dark as a shark's, were locked onto the figure in the pool. He was looking at the gasping, soaking, humiliated woman, who was now, with a look of utter, soul-crushing relief, looking back at him. Elias, Zara whispered. And in that one single, horrifying instant, Kieran Bancroft's drunken, triumphant, racist world shattered. He saw Elias look at the woman. He saw the cold fury on Elias's face melt, replaced by a look of pure, agonizing pain. And Bancroft, he understood. Zara Vance. Elias Vance. This wasn't some ghetto woman. This wasn't some token guest. This wasn't some affirmative action hire he could bully for sport. This was his savior's wife. This was the chief legal counsel of Vance Digital. This was the woman who was in charge of the due diligence on the $5 billion deal. This was the woman he had just called ghetto trash. This was the woman he had just, in front of 50 recording smartphones, violently shoved into a swimming pool. He was no longer a king. He was no longer a predator. He was a 72-year-old, bankrupt, and terrified old man. Elias, he stammered, his voice now a pathetic, high-pitched squeak. I didn't know. It was a joke. It was a misunderstanding. Elias Vance did not respond. He did not look at him. He moved. He walked with his calm, measured predator's grace, right past the groveling, sputtering billionaire. He walked right past him as if he was not even there. He walked to the edge of the pool, where his wife was treading water, shivering. He knelt on the wet marble, his $10,000 tuxedo pants soaking in the chlorinated water. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just held out his hand. Zara, he said, his voice so soft, so full of love and pain that it cut through the silence. Come on, baby. I've got you. Zara, her face still streaming with mascara and pool water, took his hand. With a single, powerful, and gentle pull, he lifted her out of the pool, out of her humiliation, and pulled her straight into his arms. He held her, soaking wet, against his own chest. He didn't care about his suit. He didn't care about the cameras. He just held his wife. I'm so sorry, Elias, she whispered into his chest. Shoo, he said, his voice a low, protective rumble. You have nothing to be sorry for. He does. Bancroft, seeing this, saw his last desperate chance. The deal. The money. That's all that mattered. Elias, please, he begged, scuttling forward, his hands out. We can fix this. It was the champagne. It was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. But think of the deal. The $5 billion. Think of the board. Think of the business. You can't let a simple emotional moment get in the way of our beneficial business relationship. We need each other, Elias. Please. He was groveling. The king was on his knees, begging the new money CEO to save him. Elias held his wife for one more second. Then slowly he unwrapped his arms. He began to unbutton his own tuxedo jacket. Zara looked at him, confused. He slipped the jacket off his own shoulders. And with a tenderness that was a rebuke to the entire hateful scene, he wrapped it around his wife's shivering shoulders. He covered her ruined dress. He covered her humiliation. He covered her, in his own name, in his own power. And only then did he turn. He turned, and he looked for the first time at the pathetic, groveling, terrified old man. Kieran Bancroft, seeing he had his attention, tried one last time. The deal. Elias, we sign on Monday? Elias Vance looked at the man who had just assaulted his wife. He looked at the man who was set to lose everything. And his face was pure, cold finality. Mr. Bancroft, he said, his voice like ice. My wife's dignity is not for sale. He paused, letting the words land, letting the cameras record, letting the entire silent, watching world hear the sentence. The deal is terminated. The deal is terminated. The words echoed across the silent, moonlit terrace, captured by 50 glowing smartphones. Kieran Bancroft, who was still groveling on his knees, froze. The blood, which had drained from his face when he first recognized Elias, now seemed to drain from his entire body. He looked desiccated. No, he whispered, his voice a dry, rattling sound. Elias, please, you can't. $5 billion, my company. I'm bankrupt. Elias Vance did not respond. He did not look at him. He didn't have to. He had already passed his sentence. He kept his $10,000 tuxedo jacket wrapped firmly around his wife's shoulders. He put one hand on the small of her back. Let's go home, Zara, he said, his voice now warm, meant only for her. He turned and he began to walk. And the crowd of billionaires, senators, and socialites, they parted. They parted for Elias and Zara like the Red Sea, pulling back, their faces a mix of terror, awe, and respect. Elias and Zara, the soaking wet lawyer and the black CEO, were now the most powerful people in the room. They walked with calm, unhurried royal dignity right through the center of the ballroom, past the orchestra, and out the grand entrance. They left Kieran Bancroft alone on the terrace, on his knees, soaking in a puddle of water from Zara's ruined gown. The cameras, which had followed Elias and Zara, now swiveled back to him. The king was dead, and the vultures had arrived. Before Elias and Zara had even given their car to the valet, the first video was uploaded. By the time they hit the highway, the hashtag was trending. #Poolgate. It was an avalanche. The smirk was the kill shot. The videos, filmed from 50 different angles, were brutal. Billionaire Bancroft's racist rage. Old money mogul assaults black lawyer. Shocking video. Bancroft's $5 billion mistake. The market, which never sleeps, reacted first. In pre-market trading, at 4 a.m., the algorithms, driven by the overwhelmingly negative social media sentiment, began to sell. By 6 a.m., Bancroft Holdings, ticker, BANK, was down 10%. By 8 a.m., it was down 30%. By the 9:30 a.m. opening bell, the stock had imploded. It was a catastrophic 47% crash. $2.5 billion of his family's 100-year-old legacy evaporated before he'd even had his morning coffee. At 10 a.m., Kieran Bancroft, his hands shaking, his eyes bloodshot from a night of drinking and terror, walked into his own boardroom for an emergency meeting. His board of directors, The same old money dinosaurs who had laughed with him were not laughing now. They were sitting silent, their faces grim. Kieran, his chairman, a man named Stevens, said, not even bothering to look at him. We've all seen the videos. All. 50 of them. It was a misunderstanding. Bancroft stammered. I was drunk. She provoked me. We can fix this. I'll issue an apology. An apology? The chairman said, his voice dripping with ice. It's too late for that. Our primary lender, the bank that holds your $5 billion in debt, just called. They're activating the morals clause in your contract. They're calling in the entire loan. Effective immediately. We are insolvent. But that's Elias Vance. Bancroft shrieked. He owns that debt. He did this. No, Kieran, the chairman said, finally looking up, his eyes dead. Elias Vance didn't do this. You did. You did it when you shoved his wife into a pool. You did it when you called her ghetto trash. You are a liability. He slid a single piece of paper across the 40-foot mahogany table. The board has voted. Unanimously. You are fired for cause. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The collapse was total. His creditors, the ones he had bullied for years, tore his company apart for scrap. His friends, the senator and the bank president, issued public statements condemning his shocking and unacceptable behavior, distancing themselves completely. And his wife, his old money socialite wife, who had not been at the gala. She saw the #Poolgate videos. She didn't see a racist attack. She saw social suicide. She saw her name, her parties, her status ruined. She was humiliated. By 4 p.m. that same day, she had packed her bags, taken the kids, and left the mansion. The divorce papers, filed by the most expensive lawyer in Atlanta, were on his desk by 5 o'clock. But the final killing blow came from the inside. It came from his assistant, a quiet, older woman who had sat outside his office for 20 years, who he had underpaid, ignored, and verbally abused. The woman who, as it turned out, was the original source for Zara Vance's investigation. She had been feeding Zara's law firm everything. When the Department of Justice, prompted by the public outcry, launched a full-scale federal investigation into Bancroft's civil rights violations, she was their star witness. She handed them 20 years of evidence. The racist emails, the audio recordings of him ordering his managers to not sell to black families, the redlining maps, the secret payoffs. She gave them everything. Kieran Bancroft, the untouchable king, was not just fired. He was not just divorced. He was not just bankrupt. He was indicted. 1 year later, the magnificent 40-acre, old money Bancroft estate, the one built by his grandfather, was on the auction block, seized by the federal government. There was only one bidder, an anonymous LLC. The mansion was sold for pennies on the dollar. 2 months after that, the gates swung open. Not for a gala, but for a press conference. Elias Vance and Zara Vance stood on the grand marble steps. Elias's company, Vance Digital, hadn't just survived losing the Bancroft deal. They had been hailed as heroes. A new company, a better one, had given them a $10 billion deal. They were now the most powerful couple in the city. Elias stepped to the podium. 1 year ago, he said, his voice strong, my wife was assaulted on these very grounds by a man who believed his money and his name made him untouchable. Today, we are proving him wrong. He stepped aside and gestured to the grand oak doors. My wife and I, he announced, have purchased this house, this monument to old money hate, and we are turning it into a home. We are donating it and $50 million to found the Zara Vance Scholarship Fund, a home and a school for black women and other women of color who are going to law school. The crowd of reporters and students erupted in applause. The camera pushes in on Elias and Zara, holding hands, smiling. They are standing on the steps of the mansion, once a symbol of racist exclusion, now a beacon of inclusive power. They didn't just win. They didn't just get revenge. They had taken the house that hate built, and they had given it to the very people that man had tried to keep out. They had changed the system. forever.
Here at Black Lives Story, we believe that true power isn't about the money you have, it's about the character you show. That billionaire thought his money made him a king. But a man with no character is a man with nothing. If you believe that dignity is worth more than any deal, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see what real power looks like. And, most importantly, subscribe to Black Lives Story and hit that notification bell. We have 1 million more stories of justice that are waiting to be told.